Happy Friday, everyone. This is Mike Doloff with Inflow CX. I'll be part of the panel, the less important part of it. I've got my esteemed colleague, Drew Anderson from ATL on with me. Drew, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today.
Drew's definitely the star of the show. I'm here just as sideshow Bob, I guess. So we're going to dive into mastering toll-free number management in the contact center. I will be really disappointed in myself if you don't walk away with some really new nuggets of information after this, because I thought I knew a lot about telecom, and it turns out there's a lot to still be learned. And so Drew's going to shed some light, I think, in some of the lesser known parts around really kind of control and freedom for toll-free numbers. And I'm excited to jump into that. Just some housekeeping things. If there's someone on your team you want to send this to, we'll have it recorded. We've also got some other great upcoming webinars. If you love hearing my voice, you can join me on the 12th talking about public sector and modernizing CX strategy there. We've got another one coming up later in October about a lot of customers moving from Avaya. We've got one talking about kind of best practices there from Avaya to Genesis. All right, let's jump into what we got for an agenda. Oops, moved too fast. Hold on. All right, I'm going to give you just a quick intro. We always get some people on who've never met Inflow CX, so I want you to know kind of in the universe, where do we fit? So you have some context on why are we talking about this? What do we do? And then we're going to jump into the toll-free numbers topic at hand. We'll have Q&A at the end, and contact information if you have follow-up. So without further ado, let's jump into a quick intro on Inflow CX. So I'm the Chief Revenue Officer. I've been here about 9 years. Inflow CX, we really focus on contact center technology. That's what we do. It's a broad space. I'll show you a slide in just a minute of kind of some of the categories, but this is what we do. We've done it for our entire company, continue to build out more capabilities, but a lot of conversations these days around AI and optimization and automation. All the above we help with, and do that for hundreds of customers, some of whom are on this call with us today. All right, let me give you a sense of, we work really with, we're always looking at and spend a lot of time evaluating and talking to and building relationship with all the kind of tech partners in this really big CX technology space. And so you can see that we run the gamut, right? Core CCaaS vendors and AI companies, agent assist companies, quality, WFM, WEM, BPOs, UCaaS, you name it. Like, we work with all the players that touch this kind of interaction CX space. And ATL, who I'm going to pass it over to, is one of our partners that is very unique. There's really nobody on this slide even comparable to what they do. And this is not, though, a big sales pitch for ATL. This is really about educating you guys on toll-free numbers and what you can do and what's possible. Some of it's, again, some of it I think will be new. So Drew, let's jump into our topic at hand. Tell us a little more about how do we get some insights into mastering toll-free?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. So toll-free numbers today, they're an important part for contact centers to touch base with their customers, prospects, and was going to kind of chat about a little bit today about how we gain ownership and be able to manage and control those toll-free numbers. But before we dive into that, I kind of wanted to chat a little bit about the current landscape today. So some of the challenges that we see. Contact centers are continuing to see like a downward trend in their connect rates with their consumers. People aren't answering the phone due to spam tagging, robocalling, just loss of trust when they see a phone number that they don't answer calling their phone. Another thing that we've seen a lot recently, DDoS attacks, outages to contact centers where their numbers have gone down are costing millions in lost revenue. Some of the recent estimates that we've seen with some studies, about $50,000 on average per hour of having your contact center down with their phone numbers. So a big issue with lost revenue and loss in trust. And we continue to see the landscape with regulatory complexities. Everyone's still talking about stir, shake, and attestation. How do we ensure that we're following the rules, but also finding a way to kick out some of those bad players in the game who are causing issues for contact centers to connect with their customers? Now, when it comes to toll-free numbers, there's still huge benefits to contact centers. Number one, they remain a huge resource for the companies to connect with their consumers. When people want to call the company that they're working with, they typically trust calling a toll-free number. And even things like vanity numbers continue to remain a very important piece of marketing and brand recognition. You know, if I have a structured settlement and I need cash now, who am I going to call? 877 cash now, you
I
know?
was just thinking all the jingles I know that play into that bullet point.
Exactly. So it's great for brand recognition, and toll-free numbers are the only numbering asset that you can actually gain authoritative ownership and control today. You can't do it with the IDs. Toll-free numbers, you can actually control and own those to be able to have a lot of benefits available to your contact center. So the key to taking ownership and control of your toll-free numbers is what we call a RespOrg. So what is a RespOrg? Back in the early 1990s, the FCC said, hey, toll-free numbers are getting very popular. We need to find a way to help regulate these and ensure they're being used properly. That's when they created responsible organizations, what we call RespOrg today. A RespOrg is responsible for maintaining that registration of those toll-free numbers through the SMS 800, which is now called SOMOS. They're responsible for following regulatory guidelines and ensuring that those numbers are not being used in fraudulent ways. But they also, the big thing here is they maintain that control and ownership of those toll-free numbers.
So Drew, who typically is the RespOrg for kind of in layman's terms for most customers that you guys see before they become their own RespOrg?
Absolutely. So typically there's three options for RespOrg. Number one is I just rely on my carrier or service provider to be the RespOrg. That's kind of how that's how it began early in the 1990s. There was 5 RespOrgs created. There was 4 of those that were carriers. We were one of the first 5 that said, hey, carriers shouldn't just have all the control of toll-free numbers. Let's give the power to enterprise businesses and contact centers to take that control and ownership. So there's 3 options today to become a RespOrg. Number one is, like I mentioned, you have your carrier service provider. That's how a lot of people, when I see and having conversations with people today, they're currently set up. It's their big tier 1 provider or their UCaaS or CCaaS solution that's providing their cloud voice services. The background is their RespOrg.
That's the de facto, I think, right, for everybody.
Yep.
That is where, if you're like, I don't know, this is it. It's number one typically, right?
Absolutely. But there's kind of some, there's costs and benefits to those. Number one, if you're relying on your carrier, your service provider to be the RespOrg, you have no control. You don't actually have authoritative ownership regarding those numbers, and it's risky. Like I mentioned earlier, that carrier goes down and that service provider has an outage, your contact center's down. You're not receiving phone calls. Second option is to actually go to Somos directly. Somos is the FCC appointed regulatory authority. You can go to Somos and set up your own RespOrg. However, typically that's mostly for carriers. It's very lengthy, it's expensive. There's a lot of regulatory burdens you have to go through, as well as certifications that can slow you down of taking that ownership and control. Or third option, you can use an independent RespOrg provider such as ourselves. Typically, it's very quick and easy. You still get full control and authoritative ownership of those toll-free assets, but it's almost the Somos easy button. You push it, become your own RespOrg, and take control of those toll-free assets.
I gotta imagine option 2 is very a lot of paperwork, a lot of challenges there.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people don't have that kind of time to spend on the process. Can you highlight? Maybe you'll get to this later too. Authoritative ownership. You've said that a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Can you break that down? What's that mean exactly?
Absolutely. Authoritative ownership is that you own and you control that toll-free number, the data that's associated with that toll-free number, whether it be CNAM, caller ID. You now control where that toll-free number routes through routing selection, and we'll kind of talk about that more in a second. But essentially, you are the authority of that toll-free number, and you control how that works and interacts with the telecom world.
So if you don't have that, you're asking someone else to make those changes, or you're working through, you don't have control to go in and configure or do whatever you want to do on those
Absolutely.
things. Okay.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads us on to the next slide here. The benefits and control of being your own RespOrg or taking that authoritative ownership. Number one, typically whenever we see a large DDoS attack or an outage, our phones are ringing off the hooks because there's no DR option. If a carrier goes down, you're pretty much at the whim of the carrier to get those numbers back up and running. Sometimes those outages can last as long as 48 hours. But by becoming your own RespOrg and taking control, you have the ability to quickly reroute traffic to a backup carrier of your choice. So we're talking getting those numbers back up and running within 6 minutes to ensure that your contact center can keep receiving calls and you can keep business operations running smoothly. Another huge benefit of it too, by becoming your own RespOrg, you actually gain a lot of power when it comes to negotiating costs and reduce expenses around your carriers and service providers. Was just recently talking to a newer partner of ours this week. They were getting charged upwards of 5 cents per minute for their toll-free traffic. They became their own RespOrg. They're now paying 0075 cents per minute. So massive cost savings when it comes to reduction, because you now say, hey, I'm my own RespOrg. I can go wherever I want. Let's talk pricing and maybe we can find some efficiencies in that cost.
Yep. Hey, can I go back really quick to the DR thing? Because I think
Sure.
DR, this is a piece to the DR solution. There still has to be more to it, right? Meaning now you can control where to redirect, but you got to have somewhere to redirect to, right?
Correct.
So this is a key part of the puzzle. You have control now, but it's not the end all solution. We got to talk more about, we got to build the rest of the DR plan out and all that sort of stuff. So, but I think this is a key piece.
Yep.
You can have two carriers, but if you can't control numbers, that's going to be pretty tough, right? So this is the control for the toll free. That's flipping the gate to go from routing here to routing there. Well, we got to be able to have somewhere to route it to. But
Yep.
I just want to call that out. There's more work to be done there, right, with the customer, but this is a huge piece of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Best practices with DR, you want to always have two carrier relationships. There are a few carriers out there which have hot standby routing where you don't have to have any traffic minimums or cost to be a backup option. So there is opportunity there too for contact centers to explore. Another big thing with taking that ownership and control is fraud prevention, fraud monitoring, spam tag mitigation. You can control things with your toll-free numbers. We see a lot of toll-free numbers used for inbound traffic only. But there's fraudsters out there who are saying, hey, that's a really popular number. We're going to spoof that number to that customer base and try and get their information. By owning your toll-free number, you can add things like DNO, do not originate, to prevent that spoofing if it's an inbound only toll-free number. But we also have a lot of exciting features within platforms. By becoming your RespOrg, you can add in fraud monitoring, where you're actually looking at if there's any fraudulent activity going on with my numbers. Are my numbers showing up as spam on different carrier networks? We've seen a lot of, I guess, things and changes in the industry over the last 5 years when it comes to trying to prevent fraud and robocalling. And there hasn't been a solution that's really been able to fix that. Stir shake and has been a big challenge for a lot of people. But what we see coming here in the near future with big changes, the industry wants reduction of fraud. They want to know when their numbers are showing up as fraud, and they want to be able to clean those numbers up and say, hey, I'm not a fraudulent business. My number should not be showing up as spam on AT&T. How do we fix that? By becoming your own RespOrg, you have the ability to control that data and advocate for that to get that cleaned up.
That's huge. If you think about the brand impact, right, of that
Yep.
type of stuff, that's great.
Absolutely. Another big thing that's a big talk recently is branded identity control. We've had caller ID since the 1990s, but now we're looking at new technologies where you're going to be able to populate a logo, a website URL, even intent of the phone call. And we're doing that with toll-free numbers today. It's very exciting where the industry is headed. We've seen some big movement of saying, hey, today, if I make an outbound call, I'm showing up differently on all the different wireless carrier networks. How do we fix that? By becoming your own RespOrg, you now have control of that branded identity and how it outpulses to the world. Really exciting stuff in that regard. We've seen some of our partners who were using toll-free numbers. They were in a callback queue. Toll-free numbers called back. They were just pulsing out their 800 number. answer rates were below 20%. When they became their own RespOrg and then controlling that branded identity for those outbound calls, they were showing things like CNAM, even website URL. They saw answer rates as high as 77%, which is a huge jump up from what they've seen. And that was just in 2 months. So really exciting stuff.
And I would say it's early days of most companies have this. So if you have this as a business, you are ahead of, I don't know what percentage, but a massive amount of your competition and just the general market. In the level of trust, it's very infrequent for me still, right? Meaning there's just not a lot of companies I don't think you're even aware they have this. But when you get one and it's the company and it's got like the intent and it's got some of these things, like my confidence level in that, like, okay, this isn't some, random Oregon number that I'm like, I don't know what this is about, goes way up, right? And so I don't think most people know that exists, right? Or where that's going. So that's great.
I mean, consumers have lost confidence in toll-free and not just in toll-free and phone numbers. If they don't know who's calling them, they're not answering. Because if I pick up that phone, it's probably someone trying to renew my vehicle warranty. So it's wild what we've seen, but there are a lot of exciting changes. The industry is demanding it. That branded identity is a big topic at the FCC on making sure that we have trusted people calling us, so we can improve those connection rates. Saw a funny article the other day. There was a lost hiker, I think, out in Colorado, and the search and rescue teams were trying to call his cell phone and he wasn't answering it because he didn't know the number, which was
I
wild.
saw that.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah. But exciting things coming in branded identity. Our RespOrg platform is going to be on the forefront of that, of being able to pulse that branded identity out to the world and across those carrier networks to ensure that delivery and increase that consumer confidence. And just the final piece too is by becoming your own RespOrg, you now open your world up to a lot of different vendor selection and control. You are the responsible organization. Again, like above, you gain that kind of power of saying, I own my numbers, I control them. And you can set up different vendors within your contact center to best suit your business. So it's a big negotiating and power tool as well.
I think there's a couple points I want to hit on this to reemphasize. So that first one is you still have carriers, right? This is not displacing ATL, for example, or any one of your competitors does not displace the carrier, right? This is peeling out that toll-free RespOrg piece of what you usually think of as just a carrier function, peeling it out independently and giving you freedom and control over that.
Exactly.
So that's part one. Part two is, gee, Drew, and I know this isn't a sales pitch, but like I look at this and I go, two things. First off, this sounds really expensive. Is it expensive?
No, it's actually quite not expensive. We typically see cost savings by becoming their own RespOrg. Carriers and service providers are charging a per toll-free number rate per month on toll-free numbers that can be anywhere between $1 to $4 per month per number. By becoming your own RespOrg, again, those go away. Typically, you should only be paying for your transport or your traffic, which, even if you're almost close to $1 million or 1 million minutes per month, you should be paying less than a penny.
Yeah.
So a lot of cost reduction there too. And the carrier piece is important. A lot of people come to us and say, hey, well, I work with a big tier 1 carrier. Can I be my own RespOrg? Yes. You can just keep your numbers provisioned with them. You become your own RespOrg. And there's no kind of architectural impact to how those toll-free numbers route currently today. So it's pretty quick and easy.
That's awesome. I used to think of this incorrectly as sort of just a really good and really cost-effective insurance policy. And it is that, but I think it's more than that. And I think that's the second point I'd make is some of this is insurance and protection, but it's also control and business levers and things that you didn't know you had the ability to do that you can now do. So it's not just kind of protecting in the DR stuff. It's great. It's more than that. Yeah. And I was shocked, right? I asked this several years ago when I met this team and I was like, I thought I knew a lot about telco, like I said, and now, wow, this is mind blowing. I had no idea. That's the big hurdle, actually. It's just education, right? The reality is if everybody knew this, they would be flocking to ATL or anybody that they thought was the best one. I think ATL is great, by the way, but I think they're on the forefront of a lot of stuff. But it's just a lack of it's just a lack of awareness that this even exists. Everyone just sort of
Yeah,
assumes that has to live with whoever's providing my telco,
exactly.
which is the big aha that you should hopefully take away is no, this is a separate thing. You can control
Mhm.
it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, so you mentioned like toll-free numbers go away. There's often ROI in this. Just I know this isn't like the product sales pitch, but just to give a sense, like basically with ATL, you're getting a platform, a software layer to control all of this, right? And you're
Mhm.
paying for effectively like a monthly platform fee to use the platform, right? Is that
Yep.
kind of high level?
Yeah, high level, it's a flat platform access or API if you choose to integrate in that way, in a very small per toll-free number charge.
Yep.
And it's typically a drastic cost savings than what we see a lot of contact centers paying their carriers today.
Awesome. Really
Which
cool.
kind of leads me into just a quick commercial for ATL. Our platform is called ATLaaS. It's a cloud-based, comprehensive toll-free number management platform. We were the first carrier-neutral RespOrg in the world. We were one of the first 5. We were not a carrier. We've been doing this for 30 years, so we have a lot of experience in this. We're the voice of the enterprise business and contact center to Somos and the FCC. But we make it easy on you. It's the easy button. It's not complicated. A lot of times when I talk about RespOrg with people, they think it's going to be a lot of work and effort on their part to implement and integrate. We give you freedom, trust, control, and uptime of your toll-free numbers in a comprehensive management solution that's easy to access, easy to learn.
You give a sense of like somebody says, wow, this is great, and I want to move my toll-free to ATLaaS. What does that typically timeline look like? And what's the kind of process, just high level, look like?
Yeah, I mean, typically we can get people up and running within 5 to 7 business days. The biggest
Wow.
thing is letting your carrier know that, hey, I'm becoming my own RespOrg. Um, Typically, the carriers will then want to talk about, adjusting contracts, because the people who are becoming their own RespOrg are advocating all those RespOrg fees go away within their contracts that they have today. But it's pretty quick and easy. Essentially, you maintain your toll-free numbers provisioned with your carrier, but then you RespOrg them to your new unique RespOrg ID. And then you have control. You can control where they go, how they route, and the whole new world opens up to contact centers being able to update everything with their toll-free numbers.
Love it.
Mhm.
What's the typical challenges that a customer would face with presumably their carrier, right? Of saying, hey, I want to do this. What do you typically see? Do you see obviously the carriers are like, oh, that's some revenue loss for me. So they don't
Mhm.
play as nice, probably. They have to legally, I assume, because a customer can control what they want to do, right? So walk through kind of the typical challenges you see just to give people some view into what that might look like.
Sure. I mean, typically all the major carriers will support you being your own independent RespOrg. Some of the challenges lie when your carrier is an aggregator, where they have different carrier relationships in the background that they're shuffling through based off of, geographic locations, etc. That's when there can be a little bit of challenges, and they may not support you being your own RespOrg just because they're in the background switching traffic. So that can be a challenge, but typically we see a lot of contact centers are using those big tier 1 relationships, even tier 2, and they're fully supportive of them being their own RespOrg. And it's where we see the industry going. Everyone wants ownership of their assets, right? You want to own your own website domain. You want to control that website domain. Why not own and control those toll-free numbers?
That's a great analogy, right? Can you imagine if you had your website and you had no control over
Yeah,
changes or things on it? That would be scary. We would
yep,
all feel very uncomfortable with that.
exactly.
And that's exactly what's happening with this asset for most businesses. Huh,
Yeah.
that's great. So, sorry, I just kept interrupting you and all this stuff. I
No,
guess
no,
it's time for
that was my
Q&A.
quick that was my quick plug. I would love to just open it up to any questions
Yeah, we've
that
got
we had.
a couple from my friend Henry here, who I'm glad attended. So this is a great scenario he brings up on the first one. So his question is, as a BPO, so they're BPO themselves,
Correct.
can they use something like an ATL to give customers ownership, right? Or would they want to give each customer have their own sort of ATL instance, if you will, ATLaaS instance, right? Can you give them just visibility to a piece of it, or would it be like, yeah, they get 4 instances of ATLaaS or something?
Yeah, we can. There's several options there. I mean, number one, the BPO can become their own RespOrg and then have sub accounts and sub RespOrg IDs for each of their customers. That's a
Nice.
great option. We have a lot of partners that do that today. Because
Sounds like a value add, right? It's part of the pitch for them, right?
absolutely, because that way they can give some management and control to their customer, but they also have that umbrella to protect them as well, to initiate any changes for their customers that
That's
will benefit
fantastic.
them.
That's great. Awesome. Another question that has come up: how about SMS? We talked a lot about voice. Does toll free with SMS? How does that work? Does that work? Is that coming?
Yep.
Give some color.
Toll free with SMS is live. You can control SMS with toll free. If those numbers go down, you can have a backup toll free SMS provider to get those
Wow,
numbers back up and running. It is available today.
that's incredible.
Mhm.
Um, question on here. Let's see. Let me get the next one. We got a couple other good ones. We talked about toll free. Will this ever work for DIDs?
Uh, right now, today, no, but exciting things are coming. We are actually developing a solution that is going to give people control of their local numbers and DIDs. The reason why there's not something like a RespOrg for DIDs today is the carrier owns those numbers, they control them. If you're going to reroute traffic, you have to process a port for local numbers, which can take lengthy time, sometimes up to 48 hours. But we are in development. We hope to be first to the market with that, of giving full authoritative ownership and control of DIDs as well. And we anticipate that, oh gosh, probably early to middle of next year of going live with that solution. So exciting things to come.
That's super cool.
Mhm.
Hey, to go back on the SMS, got a follow-up question on that. If you've got control and authoritative ownership of your toll-free SMS number, have you seen improvements, and has that in practice, or in theory, can it improve the deliverability issues that people are seeing with registration with SMS?
Yes. So a lot of things with SMS, you can actually add the branded identity onto that toll-free number, which we highly recommend.
Wow.
Being able to even just caller ID or CNAM, adding that to the toll-free number with that SMS to display that business's name, is going to help deliverability, but also help with the trusted interaction of the consumers that you're reaching out to.
Okay. All right. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So one more here is, does this work only for large enterprises, or is this scalable down for the small business?
It's completely scalable. We have partners that have one toll-free number on our platform, but it's a very important number to them, all the way up to customers who have over 100,000 toll-free numbers. So it can really work for any size business. The big thing is if they just want to take ownership and control. If you have a toll-free number that's important to rely on connecting with your customers or prospects, RespOrg is a great option for you to add value to those numbers and to your customer base.
Awesome. And I know this is a good question, kind of getting into the architecture a little bit, but if you're now the RespOrg and you're working with ATL as a platform, is there a risk and a concern about a single point of failure? Can you high level address that?
There is not a single point of failure with our platform, because essentially what we're doing is just controlling the routing templates through Sonos. We don't sit in the call path. A RespOrg doesn't sit in the call path. Everything about the architecture remains the same by becoming your own RespOrg. You just have the ability to quickly reroute that traffic and then control the data to Sonos, with your updates on branded identity, fraud protection, things like that.
So even if ATL, or if the ATLaaS product was down, whatever's programmed in there still exists and goes on. You wouldn't have that ability to make changes at that point, right? But as far as routing and everything, it's functioning just like it was programmed to do, because you're not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we have 6 nines of uptime. We're shooting for 100% of uptime. Our platform uses the Azure Microsoft Cloud across 6 different regional data centers. So
Wow.
we haven't experienced an outage in over 5 years. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I've never heard 6 nines before, so you guys are charting new waters there. That's fantastic. So we got one last question here from Pedro. Can you, for the CNAM URL, intent, branding, logo, do you register numbers like local DID toll free to all analytical companies, and how long does the process take? That's a great question. So what's that look like, that process?
Yeah, so today it's a challenge because all the different wireless providers are using those analytics programs. You got First Orion, Hyatt, TNS,
Yep.
even big third parties like Newstar. That's where the big changes are coming. There was a big SIPNOC event in Washington, D.C. recently. The main focus was how do we get this data from a centralized authoritative source?
Yep.
And that's going to be huge with toll-free numbers, DIDs, owning and controlling your own numbers. You're going to be the source of truth for how that broadcasts to the industry. And that's where it's headed. So exciting things to come in that regard for branded identity and how it's updated and shared.
Awesome. Thank you, Pedro, for the question. Thank you, Henry, and others for their questions. All right, we're at our time here. So if you've liked or heard what, hopefully you've gotten some great education out of it. Drew, I think that was a phenomenal job. I was reinforced and reminded of a couple things I'd forgotten, but really cool stuff that's happening. I'm excited that you guys are at the forefront of it. If anyone wants to get in touch and talk, see a demo of ATLaaS, talk more and talk through specific use cases or questions in your environment, get in touch with us, reach out to me. You can see the contact information here. We'd love to have a conversation and dig deeper, and really appreciate you spending time with us on this Friday. Have a rest of your Friday and a great weekend, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.